Venti has been buffed. This is not a drill. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Okay, so out of nowhere, Hoyoverse has buffed Venti. Well, not just Venti, they have buffed a collection of characters from Mondstadt that now fall under the Hexencircle tag, and all of those characters, when played with one another, are able to unlock some special additional effects that makes them stronger, and Venti is a part of that. That's right, they actually buffed Venti, as in, they looked at the character, and they made him significantly better by improving his kit, and I'm very surprised about it. I never thought that this day would come, to be honest. Everyone always spoke of how Venti really needed a rework or a buff or something like that, but it just wasn't going to happen because Genshin doesn't really do buffs or reworks, and they hadn't for many years. Why would they start doing it now? Well, I suppose Hoyoverse just said, I mean, we didn't do it before, but whatever, we're doing it now. So a handful of the Mondstadt cast is relevant again. Wow, I mean, okay. Great, I'm very happy about it, but just before we even get into these buffs, I just wanted to say this is an insane thing to me. And I also want to say, I find it really funny that we're getting another Venti signature weapon, because that means that by the time that this weapon releases, Venti's technically going to have had 3 signature weapon releases in the past. That's pretty funny. Skyward, then Elegy, and then we're getting this new one now. But holy guacamole. Yep, Venti actually got buffed, so to all of my fellow Venti fans that have been long waiting for this day where the character would actually become relevant in the grand majority's eyes, well, we're here now. Venti is actually going to be a viable character. Okay, so that's grand and all, but what exactly does he do now, and does that suddenly make him worth pulling for now? Because for a long time, this character very much had a reputation of he's just not worth it at all. Now, I always did defend Venti because I do think that people were too harsh on him. He did have niche use cases, but the issue was, even if I was aware of these use cases and I did try to spread, yes, he can be used in some areas, it still never really made him worth pulling for, and recently, Hoyoverse has very much been trying to make Venti feel a bit more relevant. We have had abysses within this past year in which you would ideally want a really good grouper character like Venti to help make the chamber easier, usually on floor 11, just an odd one out. We have had a couple of things like that here and there, but once again, nothing to truly make him feel like a worthwhile pull. This is definitely sealing the deal, and this is definitely going to bring him back. It's at least going to make him feel like a good character to invest into, and you don't really have to feel like you're investing into this super niche pick anymore. Essentially, 2 things have happened to Venti. First of all, he's been turned into a better support than before, and second of all, he's also able to play as a main DPS now. And no, I'm not talking about some copium physical team that you're just playing for fun, I'm talking about him being an actual main DPS. So, in terms of what they've done to his supportiveness, whenever he uses his burst, if the active character triggers a swirl reaction, their own damage is going to increase, and so will Storm Eyes. That's right, Venti's own personal damage even as a sub-DPS is being increased. And then, as for his DPSing playstyle, whenever you use his burst, he's then going to have Anemo-infused normal attacks, and on top of that, his elemental burst damage is once again going to increase. So, they have added new factors to his kit that is ultimately going to make him a stronger character now. Now, I obviously still expect Venti's best use cases to still be within those high mobbing scenarios. However, what these buffs do is that they turn him into an actually substantial unit of value even outside of those situations. Now, in terms of whenever you're going to be using his supportive capabilities, I personally think that he's going to be very tied to the Hexencircle teams. This means that whenever we get more Hexencircle characters in the future, as I personally expect that to be the case, it's likely that Venti is going to end up being very strong in that team as a support, both being able to increase the active character's damage and also trigger the Hexencircle buffs. So, with that in mind, I believe that going forward he's going to end up being a pretty good support for these specific teams. I do believe that we are definitely not done here yet when it comes to the whole Hexencircle mechanic. They are definitely introducing this in advance for future characters. I will add, I do think that on release it's still a very good mechanic, and Duran himself is going to be a very good character on launch, even if we don't have those future characters yet. So I think that's very nice, and it is indeed going to be worth investing into if you're interested in this specific archetype. I usually wouldn't recommend investing into something before it becomes good, but Venti's buffs on launch are very much going to have a use case. And if you're pulling for Duran, then you're definitely going to be leveraging the Venti buffs. If you want to play Venti as a main DPS, I believe that it's going to be likely that Durin is going to end up as his best in slot support. So if you want to play DPS Venti, that's an actual thing that you can do now that's going to be actually pretty decent. And here's the kicker. DPS Venti isn't even going to be just some mid thing. No, this is going to be an actually competitive option that you can choose to play. If you want a strong Anemo DPS and you don't already have one, Venti is going to be a fantastic option. Yes, they have genuinely brought back this character. His supportive capabilities seem very potent. They're pretty straightforward, but they get the job done more than fine. And his DPSing capabilities? Dude, let's just say that at least on the launch of the Venti buffs, we could be looking at the strongest Anemo DPS here. I don't know how long he's going to hold that title for, but yeah. And I personally believe that the Durin-Venti combo is just going to be a very strong combo in general for future Mondstadt characters. Personally, I expect those two to be very good in Varka's future team, so if you're like myself and you're very interested in Varka, getting Venti and Durin is actually going to be a very good option for you. Another thing is that he's getting another signature weapon, which I do advise that you pull for, as it's likely going to increase his personal damage by quite a significant margin. So to all of my fellow Venti lovers out there, I would suggest this weapon. It's also on banner with Durin's weapon, who is a very good DPS Venti teammate, so all around you end up in a win-win situation where no matter whose weapon you get, you're getting a pretty nice increase to your Hexencircle teams, because all around those two characters are going to be very nice for your Hexencircle setups. Okay, great. So we know that the Venti buffs were very much substantial, and Venti is very much a character that is honestly worth your time now. So, does this mean that you should be pulling for him under any specific given circumstances, and is he a good investment to make if, say, you're a new player or something along those lines? I would say that if you've already got Venti, and you've already got quite a bit of investment into him, or at least as much investment as you could realistically put into a character that's usually an Anemo support, or maybe you've already invested into his DPS artifact, who knows, but either way, if you've already got Venti, pulling for Durin would be a really good investment for you, because Venti is genuinely going to be turning into a competitive unit now. So, because of that, I actually would advise that you get Durin if you do have Venti, and I do believe that his signature weapon is worth pulling for. Then there's another thing, he's an Archon. Do you think that you should be pulling for him because he's an Archon character? Is he some must pull, or is he skippable? Okay, relax, he is not necessarily like a new Archon release. He is very strong now, and they definitely fixed his core issues. However, you don't need him. He is fantastic at what he does for sure, and I would say that if you're interested in Varka, please do pick him up. He is going to be good down the line. Same with Durin. However, if you've mostly invested into Moonglare units up until this point, I would say that the Venti and Durin combo are skippable in favor of Columbina, who is likely going to be a much bigger increase to your personal overall account. I would say that Notcry is definitely favored more specific types of investments, and generally, if you pull for Hexencircle characters, you kind of want to continue down that path. But if you're investing in Moonglare characters, you want to make sure that you're ready for Columbina, who is more than likely going to be a very big buff to all of those types of characters. So if you ask me, the Venti buffs are excellent. I am extremely happy about them as somebody who goes way back with Venti as a character. Like, seriously, I have some lore with this character. And to see him get buffs in 2025, I could not be happier. The fact that they're good buffs too. It's not like we've been thrown a bone with a little bit of meat on it, nothing much else, and it's just enough for him to get by. No, they turned him into a genuinely good unit. Like, a really good unit that's likely going to only gain value in the future, and is already going to have quite a bit of value upon his buff launch. It's so nice that they took this unit that generally just was too niche to be worth pulling for on the whole, and turned him into a character of genuine substantial value that people are actually going to have a good reason to pull for. It is so nice that they buffed him, and he genuinely feels like he can match up to that Archon status now, not only in the lore, but also in the meta. I also do find the lore reason interesting. I am curious as to what they mentioned in regards to him tapping into his power a bit more, but we'll likely find out more about that soon, and I'm personally interested in that. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked, back to the buffs. They're very straightforward buffs. They didn't necessarily overload his kit with a ton of features that suddenly makes him better, but I would say that the features that they did add were more than enough, and now he has value outside of his grouping. That was one of Venti's biggest issues. He really suffered in value if you were not leveraging his grouping. And if you weren't leveraging his grouping, there were still a couple of other things that he could provide to you, but other characters could just provide more on top of offering what Venti could if you were not using his grouping specifically. So, while I do believe that people were way too harsh on his value for a period of time, as he did get better after Inazuma, plenty of the enemies that he couldn't group before, like Spectres and Kairagi, did get nerfed to the point where they could get pulled by him. It just still wasn't really enough to justify pulling for Venti unless you were a super fan. But now, no, he is just good and he is just worth it. So if you're somebody that skipped Venti before, he is good now. He is worth it in my opinion. Obviously, you can still skip him. You don't necessarily need him, but he is good. And I do think that he is very much worth your time now. He will, of course, get a pros and cons video, but for this particular instance, I just wanted to focus on the buffs in particular. This was a very interesting move for Hoyoverse, and I seriously hope to see more like this. This was a fantastic choice. I am very happy about it. This is just great. Awesome. Hopefully this video was able to tell you about the Venti buffs. This has been Juice, signing out, and I really don't even know how to say how surreal this entire experience has been. I'm just... never thought I'd see the day. Never thought I'd see the day.